Welcome back to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper, and I'm live in Tel Aviv. We're getting some brand new video of the two hostages who were just released by Hamas. And you can see, if you look, paramedics tending to Nurit Cooper and Yocheved Lifshitz. The Lifshitz family put out a statement confirming that the two women were handed over to the Red Cross at the Rafah crossing. Sources tell CNN that the U.S. is trying to delay the ground incursion into Gaza in hopes of getting even more hostages out and more aid into Gaza. With me to discuss, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren. Mr. Ambassador, good to see you again. Do you think that President Biden will be able to continue prevailing upon Prime Minister Netanyahu to continue delaying the ground incursion for the reasons laid out, to let humanitarian aid in and to allow more hostages out?
I don't know if he's actually prevailing upon Benjamin Netanyahu to actually do this, and the National Security Council has denied it, the State Department has denied it. But let's say, for argument's sake, they are asking Israel, the United States is asking Israel to delay a bit. That's going to be one of many considerations for the Israeli government. Okay, there's the question of whether the troops are ready to go in, whether they've had enough, gathered enough evidence and intelligence about enemy positions, about the location of the hostages, and then finally, we want to get all of the Palestinian civilians away from the combat zone. Because to have them in the middle of a crossfight is not going to be good for us either. So there are many other considerations. And keep in mind, we're at a total mobilization. We have 360,000 soldiers who have been mobilized. These are the young women and men who are the backbone of our economy. And they've left their families, their homes.
Tel Aviv is pitch quiet.
Empty, right?
Yeah.
There's only limited time you can keep that many people away and keep them mobilized. And it's now been 2 weeks. It's a very long time.
When do you think the ground incursion could begin? And let me just also ask you, is it wise? I mean, does it make sense? I mean, I've heard a lot of smart people like General Petraeus and others, people who know urban combat, who say taking some time and thinking strategically might not be the worst idea.
It's not much the worst idea, but we have other clocks going. And again, one of those clocks is how many days you can keep this 360,000 mobilized, how fast we can move that Palestinian population out of the war zone, other considerations. It's true. But at the end of the day, there is no alternative but Israel to go in. Understand that for us, this is existential. Okay, if Hamas gets away with butchering, murdering, burning, raping 1,400 Israeli citizens, then this place becomes kind of uninhabitable. I don't know if you'd raise your kids here, or anybody would raise their kids here. I mean, this would be the equivalent of losing 54,000 Americans in 2 days. And what would the United States do? And there's no way that we can restore our security, our deterrence power. We're in a tough neighborhood. And begin to heal internally, because a lot's been damaged internally, the relationship between the people of Israel and the state of Israel. We cannot do that if Hamas wins this round. And a ceasefire simply means Hamas wins and we lose.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't bring that up, the ceasefire. But let me ask you just like some logistical questions. Or just how many people in Hamas do you hold responsible for what happened October 7th? Because I've heard many people say Hamas is not the Palestinian people. I mean, the Palestinian people did elect Hamas in the elections of 2006. And then since then, Hamas has not allowed an election, and they've killed a lot of people that were their political opposition. Right. And in many ways, the Palestinians have been victims of Hamas in many ways as well.
Indeed.
Right? So how many would you hold responsible?
Personally, well, they say about 150,000 actual members of Hamas.
But, I mean, is that like the Ba'ath Party? Like, I mean, some of them members of Hamas because they have to have a government job just to be trash collectors?
But let's look what happens in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. You have Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority. He's now in the 18th year of his 4-year term. Why doesn't he stand for re-election? Because in every poll, Hamas destroys him. It has a landslide victory. So Hamas is very, very popular among the Palestinian population. It's why there's a strong feeling among Israelis that we have a conflict not just with the terrorist organization, we have a conflict with a large segment of the Palestinian people.
Having said that, I personally, I'm not a spokesman for the government anymore. As you know, I'm in favor of humanitarian aid and opening up that corridor for many reasons. First of all, it has to do with our character as a Jewish and democratic state, but I also think ultimately the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, will have more time and space to fight Hamas if the international community is not accusing us of being inhumane. But out in the Israeli public, there's a real sense that the Palestinian population, or a big segment of it, both in Gaza, in the West Bank, liked Hamas, applauded Hamas, and applauded our people when they were being butchered.
There's been a lot of comparisons with a potential Israeli ground incursion, with when the U.S. was in Iraq and, and the U.S. fought in Fallujah. And that was a bloody, awful fight. And obviously Gaza City is much bigger than Fallujah. And the Iraqi fighters were gentlemen compared to Hamas.
It's even worse than that. I mean, I've fought in Gaza. I'm telling you, it's actually worse. What's worse is that, it's a warren of alleys and cul-de-sacs. They're all booby-trapped. They're mined. Right? But the worst fighting is underneath.
Oh, right, and you have the tunnels.
The real fighting is underneath. You're talking about dozens and dozens of miles of tunnels and bunkers. All of them are booby-trapped. And we have forces that are trained to go underground and fight underground. And
that's why I'm saying, is it wise to go in there that way, as opposed to special forces and taking longer but doing it more effectively? I'm no military strategist. I'm just saying.
Again, number of clocks. And one of the clocks is how long, say if you've got 1 million Palestinians out in southern Gaza, out in the winter. That's another clock, by the way. The rain's going to start falling here. It's clear tonight, but it has been raining here. How long can that situation be sustained? And I think sending in special forces to deal with the Hamas force of 150,000 people, which has proven to be militarily very well equipped, is not the response. I think there's no really alternative to Israel sending in a significant force and taking on Hamas full force and doing it very cautiously as we can, because it's going to be costly for us. The big debate here is whether we should deal with Hezbollah first. And it was a debate I had written in the Israeli press about the possibility that maybe we should contain Hamas, because they're not going anywhere, right? They're trapped. And we can continue hitting them from the ground, from the air, every different way. But Hezbollah, as a force, as a threat, is about 15 times larger than Hamas. They have 150,000 rockets. They can hit anything in Israel with a bigger payload, and many of these rockets are very accurate. And they have a terrorist force that has been killing Syrians by the hundreds of thousands for 10 years. So they are vicious, vicious, vicious. And there's a fear, and I think a very, very base fear, that once Israel is in Gaza and bogged down fighting Gaza, the troops are tired, maybe we're running low on ammunition, that's when Hezbollah will strike us. And that's almost a conventional wisdom here, that Hezbollah at a certain stage will not be able to stay out. And the big question is, who strikes first? Who gets the preemption?
Former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Jake.
Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. Coming up next, a strike near a Christian